dreamboat, walking through the red smoke, chasing a dream, watching the shadows chase me. I wanna take the road less traveled. I wanna go places unseen. I wanna spread my wings, fly out of here, where your small mind can dream, where your small mind can dream. Darkness, another rock fall, thoughtless, though I dream it all, chasing a dream, watching the shadows chase me. I wanna take the road less traveled. I wanna go places unseen. I wanna spread my wings, fly out of here, where your small mind can dream, where your small mind can dream. The road is long without you, but I see the better of views. Have to be sharp without you, but it's all worth it for the view. The road is long without you, but I see the better of you. Have to be sharp without you, but it's all worth it for the view. I wanna take the road less traveled. I wanna go places unseen. I wanna spread my wings, fly out of here, where your small mind can dream. I wanna take the road less traveled. I wanna go places unseen. I wanna spread my wings, fly out of here, where your small mind can dream, where your small mind can dream.
Good day, my friends. My traditional name is Lachichala, the name that was given to me by my family so that I know where I belong and I know my family and my land. But with the one thing I want to do first of all is thank the institution, university, for allowing me to do this sharing with you. And I want to be really clear that I'm only sharing one of our ways. But anybody that comes into our community, that we should make sure that they're comfortable in sharing our land and enjoying our ways. And I want to say thank you for taking the time out to share with me, and welcome to our Lekwungen territory. Haitcha.
So let me tell you what we are going to do today. We have, in the first 15-20 minutes, Kevin and I will be speaking a little bit, giving you a bit of an outline as to how this planning process is going to play out. After that, we have Slido questions to get your thoughts and ideas, and we have reserved the last 15-20 minutes or so to have a bit more of an open back and forth in terms of your big ideas and any questions you may have. In terms of the 15-20 minutes that Kevin and I are going to talk, here is what we are hoping to cover. We'll talk about what we are planning to do, the strategic plan itself, why it's the right time now to do it, who will be involved in the process, how will we go about doing it, how will it unfold, and what will be the timeline for it. So that ought to give you a bit of a snapshot of the entire process. And after that, we'll have the Slido questions and the broader discussion at the very end. With that, I'm going to get Kevin to come up and do his bit. So,
Thanks, Alango. Thanks very much. And good afternoon, everybody. It's, I think, really exciting that we're starting on this journey of building a new vision for the institution. And your voices all really matter, which is why we're starting with this town hall to sort of capture some sentiment from our campus, from students and student staff and faculty and staff today. There's going to be lots of engagement that we're going to do over the next few months, and it's really exciting to get that started. I wanted to thank Dr. Skip Dick for sharing. It's always incredible what Skip says when he speaks, and there's always a piece of knowledge in there that we should all really treasure. I wanted to acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Lekwungen peoples. The university stands here, and pay my respects to the Sangis, the Esquimalt, and the Saanich peoples, whose traditional relationships continue to today. Wanted to pay my respects to our elders, past and present, the elders in the community, and also pledge this institution to walk together on the path to reconciliation. It's really, really important for us. And offer also today our heartfelt feelings to the survivors of the recent discovery of the bodies at Williams Lake, and do all we can as an institution to provide support there. So thanks for joining us today. I think most people are online. We've got a small crowd here, around 30 or 40 people in the audience here, but thanks to everybody online. And today we want to take you through the reasoning for why we're going to do a new strategic plan, how we're going to do it, and how you're going to get opportunities to interact over time. The other piece I did forget, because I've got my heavy script here, is I wanted to thank everybody, faculty and staff, for making the experience of students a top priority. As I walk around campus over the last 2 weeks, I've heard time and time again from the students how important it is to be back here learning, and how pleased they are to be back on our campus. So thanks everybody for helping make that happen. So we'll move on to the slides. So we're doing a exercise about a new vision for UVic, and we're doing it a little different. And we really want to get your ideas and thoughts around one of the big questions we're going to pose. We're going to do a 5-year plan like universities always do, but we actually want to have a 30-year vision. We want to look out into the future. What will the world be like in 30 years? What will Victoria be like, the province, Canada? What are the global relationships that are going to be going on? This is a little bit daunting for some people. They go, I can't think out 30 years. Things are going to change so much. Look at the last 2 years, for example. Who knew we would have had a pandemic 2 years ago? Who knew that one of the richest people in the world was a guy that invented Zoom? You know, who knew we could respond so quickly with vaccines? Who knew that, you know, we've learned so much through this pandemic about things like accessibility to education, technology-enabled education. These are all going to be part of our future. So that's why we really want to look at 30 years and then set a 5-year plan that puts us on a direction towards the future, even though the future may change. What we want to answer is, what will the role of a university be in 30 years' time? What do we think it will be? Specifically, what will the role of UVic be? Where do we want to position ourselves? How do we want to engage with our community, with our government, with people on a global scale? We really need to start answering some of those questions. What's the nature of work going to be like, and jobs? And in 2 weeks' time, we're going to hear from the province about a 5-year economic plan. It's going to talk a lot about jobs, and you may have seen in the news this last week, 1 million new jobs in BC over the next 10 years. And different types of skills are going to be required. So how does a university fit into that? What's our role in the community? We are a community engaged university, but we've got more to do in our community. How do we affect social change, changes in the environment? How do we affect the economic recovery from the pandemic? So we're going to try to look at all those issues and build this 5-year plan that sets us on that course. And we're going to do that together. Some people are saying, why do we need a strategic plan now? Lots of reasons. First of all, we do have a strategic framework. It's a picture of it there. It's almost 5 years old, believe it or not. It finishes in 2023. So it kind of makes sense for us in 2022 to start looking at what's our next 5 years going to look like. We're also in a time when the pandemic itself is potentially finishing, becoming endemic. And we have to take those lessons that we learned through the pandemic. And those are about access to education, accessibility to education. They are about what are the new skills going to be needed We've also got a whole series of plans being developed at the university that many of you have been engaged in the consultations with. We've got a climate sustainability and action plan, a new Indigenous plan that's being worked on. We've just launched our new research plan called Aspirations 2030. We've got a new global engagement plan under building. And so this plan, the institutional plan, has to weave all of these together to make sure there's consistency in the plans, to make sure the plans achieve the goals that we're going to set in this vision. Last year I did a listening tour. I met with, I think, about 3,000 people or so, and heard what people want for UVic. And so that has to be built into our plan, what we stand for as an institution. We've also got a government that's going to undertake a funding review for universities. So what's the outcome of that, and how do we fit into that? It's important to keep our eye on that. And the last thing I think that is really changing the landscape of education is the potential for micro-credentials, which is this buzzword we've all been using in the last few years. We've actually been doing micro-credentials for many, many years, particularly through continuing studies. But the government has a real interest in this, both the federal government and provincial government. And so what's our role in micro-credentials? What's the opportunity for the university, both for credit courses, perhaps for not for credit courses? Maybe it's about lifelong learning for our alumni, lifelong learning for people in the community. And so how do we build that into our plan? The last thing is revenue. Some of you may know, some of you may not know, we're a government-funded institution plus student fees. Government support for universities is fantastic to have, but it's been diminishing over the years. And so it's our job as university leadership to think of how we can diversify the revenue so that we can inject and invest the money in some of the really great things we want to achieve as an institution. And so we need to weave that into our plan. Where are the opportunities for a university to go beyond the government funding? Because quite frankly, with diminishing government funding, there's less and less available to invest in strategic initiatives. So all these things coalesce together. It's the right time to get started. And we are on our journey, and you're here today in the first town hall. So who's going to be involved in building this vision? And basically all of you, students, staff, faculty, and our community. It's really important we engage with the community to see what their aspirations for the university are in helping solve issues like homelessness, addiction, mental health issues, driving the economy. So we'll work with the external environment, but most importantly, it's about our students, staff, and faculty. And so we're going to have lots of opportunity for engagement through things like this town hall, but we're going to have lots of online mechanisms to engage with. We'll have some strategic working groups. We'll have sticker boards all over the university where you can pop your ideas on. There's a whole multitude of ways to get engaged over the next 2 months. The engagement itself started last October. Our first stop was with our Indigenous community engagement group. We thought it was really important to signal that we wanted to hear from the local nations first, that was the first place to go to see what the aspiration was for UVic in our local communities. After that, we went and started to meet with some of the governance groups at the university. We've met with Senate, we've met with the Board of Governors, we've met with Dean's Council and the President's Leadership Council. But we only met with them as groups to get some of their big ideas about what the world might look like in 30 years. And that was our starting point for this journey. So make sure you get involved. Take whatever opportunities you can that come available to you. Today is just the start. We're going to have a relatively small window of about 20, 25 minutes to hear from you, and we want to hear from you. This isn't a Q&A today, so we're not here to say, oh, okay, what's happening, I don't know, to the world's weather, things like that. We're here to listen to you. What are your big ideas for the university? Where do you think we should be setting our direction over the next bit of time? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alango, who has been such a critical piece of the process of developing both our process for strategic planning, but also undertaking our strategic planning. So Alango, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Let me build on what Kevin just said and walk you through the logic we are going to be using to build the strategic plan. If you look at the top of the screen, both the top left and the top right, you are seeing two very big kinds of questions, reflection that we want people to engage in. On the top left, we are talking about what will the world look like in 30 years' time? What are the big trends? What are the big developments, the big disruptors that would define the kind of world we would be living in? And that gets important because we want to see what would be the role of universities in that world. What are the expectations and obligations of universities in the world 30 years from now? So that's one kind of sense-making that we do of the world, the external environment we are in. On the top right, we are looking at kind of internally and asking ourselves, what kind of a university do we want to be? What do we want to stand for? What should we stand for? And of course, that depends on understanding what are we currently standing for, what are the strengths that we have at this point in time. So if we have those two kinds of reflections, that then kind of helps us come down to, this could be the vision for the University of Victoria. What is it that we need to do to contribute to readying society and the world for that future that we just articulated? And once we have that vision, we start to go, how do we live that vision? What kind of goals do we need to achieve over the next 5 years? What are the strategic aspirations we need to achieve that will enable us to live and get to that vision? And once we have those goals outlined, we go one step deeper and go, what are the key initiatives that we need to engage in that will help us get to the different goals that we have? So each strategic aspiration, each goal that we have will have a bunch of key initiatives that we need to engage in. We want to actually go a step further and ask ourselves, how do we make sure that we can actually implement and live these initiatives? We want to take a very hard look at what are the things that actually help us in moving forward. Those are the pieces that enable us. We want to strengthen those. And what are the barriers, the road bumps that have kind of slowed us down in the past? What should we remove so that our progress towards implementing those initiatives is smooth? So if you are able to do that, then the focus on implementation comes alive, and we are able to then really move towards the vision that we have. This is a bit different from the past, where we put a lot of energy into the planning phase of it, but generally organizations, universities tend not to worry much about the implementation in terms of paying attention to it, but we want to be proactive in doing that so that from top to bottom, the big reflection all the way down to implementation, we are being very systematic in getting to that. So that's the flow. And we, as Kevin mentioned, we started the process already in phase 1, which was in fall 2021. We talked with the Indigenous Community Engagement Council, the Senate, the Board of Governors, the Dean's Leadership Council, the President's Leadership Council, the different groups to kind of seed the conversation, get some ideas, and get the ball rolling. We are in phase 2 now. This is where we reach out to all faculty, staff, and students and different stakeholders on campus, off campus, to get their ideas, to get them engaged in these different pieces of the puzzle that we want information and ideas on, so that we can move forward. We expect that to happen this month, March, a little bit into April. So in spring and summer, we ought to have a few themes that emerge from the different consultation that we do, and we'll start to weave them together over the summer into a draft plan that we'll get more people to react to, especially the external stakeholders who can react to something a bit more concrete. And sometime in fall 2022, that will get finalized and approved. So the plan is from now until November, December, we will be busy going through this process, and we'll have a full plan at the end of it. Okay. Now, so that's a quick summary of what we are planning to do. You understand what the plan is about and why we are doing it now. Who will be involved? Pretty much everybody that's connected to the university, and you have the logic that we would be following, and of course you have the timeline. Okay. Now with that, we would like to move to the next phase of the town hall. This is where we would like to get your thoughts and your ideas. The Slido polls here, and I'm going to get Kevin to come and join me as we put this out. Let me, in case you need the instructions, those of you who may be joining us a bit late, here are the instructions if you are looking for it. That is the QR code that you can see, or slido.com, and UVic is the password if you need the code you need to put in. and come and join us. Here is the first question. Looking ahead 25 to 30 years, what major developments, features, trends, and disruptors will define our world? And Kevin, we have some of the responses coming up.
Coming quickly. Artificial intelligence, not surprising. Climate change, #1 on the list right now. Mike, we need some sound. Mike, we need the mic. That's all right. We're good. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like climate change, not surprising. It's been in everywhere lately.
I see automation coming up as a key phrase as well. AI, automation, technology.
Net zero energy, Indigenous leadership, reconciliation, social justice. And that's certainly in the news all the time.
I noticed polarization in society emerging. It's interesting, some of these thoughts and ideas coming up, some are challenges that we would need to deal with. Others, of course, are wonderful opportunities for us to make sure that we prepare the university and what we do for that.
And the graduates, absolutely. Yeah. And I think a lot of what we're saying is where jobs are going to be moving in the future. Public health's coming up, mental health. Remote work's coming up. That's a really interesting one. Of course, we've had 2 years of potentially some remote work, and what that means in the future will be interesting. Immigration.
I'm starting to see a bit of a triangle here. There's technology, AI, and artificial intelligence and all that on one side. There's climate change and climate on the one side, and social justice and decolonization, reconciliation on one corner.
Housing, interesting one. I don't know if anybody saw the 2 ministers last week discussing housing on our campus. I had no idea it was actually so complex. You think it's a very simple issue, but it transcends so many different layers and boundaries. But that's something we have to deal with in our society and for our students and staff and faculty. Okay, we seem to be stuck on around 169, 170 responses. So we're assuming everybody's got their questions in there, and I think we'll just keep capturing data and we can move on
to the next
question.
The next question, yeah. What are likely to be the roles, expectations, and obligations of university in this future world? The ideas that came up are wonderful in terms of helping us think about what could be the state in 30 years' time. But the follow-up question, of course, is what does it mean for universities? What would we look like? What is it that society will expect from universities? Here are some interesting responses. We got a coach.
Talent development. Bridging, not sure what's meant by bridging, but we can tease that out apart a little bit. Supporting the labor market seems to be getting upvoted. Thought leaders, absolutely. I think universities have always been known as thought leaders. And so what is our role in making sure we maintain that position?
I can see some of the responses being upvoted by the members online. So certainly the thought leader one would be important in terms of how do we stand out in the future when there are other universities all trying to make sure they have a role to play. That would be
leadership and research combined together have 20 votes. And I think UVic has had a long commitment to research, and perhaps it's also time to continue to commit on a larger scale to really drive that impact that research can create.
I like that response on support the labor market, that is really tying what is it that the society and the world at that time would need to make sure we are graduating students who are very relevant to the requirements of that time. Doing that. Critical thinking.
I guess unfortunately we just see the top 4, don't we? We don't get to scroll down unless somebody can scroll down back there for us. Critical thinking, thought leaders going together, which is exactly where we want to be as a university, is creating the future generation of leaders and critical thinkers and thought leaders.
Is there a way to see the other responses further down? Oh, there we go. Social good.
Yeah, social good's really important. Accessibility, I think, is a huge issue for us. And one thing that always concerns me, and some have heard me say this before, is where 90% of our students come right from high school. This is a very thing we see in Canada. And there's a lot of people out there that perhaps didn't get the opportunity to finish their education, but could absolutely be great university students. And so how do we create accessibility across a whole host of issues.
I see a connection between training to address issues facing the world, the preparing graduates for the labor market, and the workforce preparation. Of course, the workforce preparation is not just limited to current students coming in from the schools, but an ongoing education and retooling of people who are out in the workforce as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Leading decolonization. And I think, whoever has written that in the support of that, you're absolutely right. As an institution that has been committed for a long time towards Indigenous education, we've got to go beyond that and look at our role in decolonization of this institution, how we can work with the city.
I love the moral role model and help create democratic citizens. It talks about not just preparing and focusing on what is on the economic side of issues, but on the social side, that we stand out as the intellectual conscience of a society, and how do we actually train and educate and be in a certain way that contributes, and it's a beacon to the society.
Yeah, and I like, Dwight, you've put a good one in here, anywhere, anytime education for all sectors of society. And so trying to find our way in that, what that means for us as an institution, how we fund that, I think is certainly a good thing to be looking at.
Education to all age groups. I think that idea came up, Kevin, in some of the other conversations we had. It's not just about students coming in from the high school, but across the board.
We see community connection coming up
Yeah.
again, that how do we interact with those around us in the communities on many different aspects. Global exchange of ideas, absolutely. Global awareness. I think, Canada is somewhat sheltered from some of the big world things that go on for whatever reason. And what can we do at this university to globally connect and be globally relevant and create impact?
I see that counteracting misinformation. I think especially now with all the fake news and all the challenges connected with that, the role of a university in helping people understand it or giving them the skills to curate that information would be key.
Fantastic. Well, some great ideas there, perhaps.
Yeah.
So we move on
It's
to the last.
starting to wind down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe the next question. For UVic to be among the impactful universities of the future, what do we need to do over the next 5 years? So it's starting to get a bit more concrete and exactly what are the initiatives, actions that we need to take. We're getting some ideas come up here. Online learning. Be bold. Engage the global south.
Comprehensive campaign. I see our Vice President, External Relations, smiling with that one. Broad-based emissions. Yeah, I think we're moving in that direction, but certainly a commitment and part of the plan to be around that. Differentiate.
Oh, I love that. Work together across disciplines.
Yeah.
We had a fascinating conversation yesterday about how do we actually help interfaculty collaboration so that we have those kinds of joint programs and research.
And always a challenge at an institution like a university to get out of those silos and actually make these interdisciplinary things happen.
Yeah.
And I think a commitment to that would be fantastic. Reach out to high schools. I think that's a great idea. That's not something we do overly well at any institution in this country.
Not about engaging government and community stakeholders. This is about making sure that we are constantly reaching out externally and not making sure we're not focusing all the efforts just on the inside. Okay, online learning.
Online learning, yeah.
That's got
Top of the list.
Yeah.
I guess the role of online learning in our degrees, for sure.
And that's something that we've been thinking of, bringing more underrepresented voices into decision-making and leadership positions.
Yeah, and we're hearing this loud and clear, whether it was in the previous town hall meetings during the listening tour or our meetings with faculty, groups of students and staff. It's absolutely about being a more inclusive institution, and that includes putting marginalized people into the leadership positions.
I noticed decolonize up on that list as well as an important one.
Increase the international presence has a lot of votes, and I think that's a really it's a great aspirational thing for the university to really create that global impact, but to be locally relevant, and that's a fine balancing act, but it's something that is necessary in today's world.
Absolutely, and I think especially if you're thinking about how it's going to be increasingly challenging for universities as we move forward, making sure we have really good connections with key players around the world. That gives us a strategic advantage that we may not by ourselves be able to have. So we actually have that kind of a strong network to do what we have to do.
I see community connections, partnering with external community. That's a recurrent theme, and absolutely we need to make sure that we're really helping solve issues that affect us in this region and in this province by working with local not-for-profits, governments.
I saw the keep relationships with alumni fly by, and I think that's an important one because they are ambassadors for the university, and I think we need to be really tapping into that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Global partnerships.
Welcoming and supporting a more diverse student body. Thanks, Jim, for that idea and the 24 people that have upvoted that. That's absolutely critical. Research infrastructure, couldn't agree more. So comes back to things like revenue diversification I talked about earlier. How can we actually support all these aspirational things we want? So we'll have to work hard on that. Sustainability. Indigenous resurgence, to center Indigenous resurgence, which I think is a fantastic thing. And I think it's something our Associate Vice President Indigenous is actually working on right now.
Yeah, updating the university learning outcomes to reflect the current world and our vision, or reflect the future world and the vision that we come up with.
Well, that's fantastic. Some great ideas coming in.
I think we can
build confidence to take risks. That's a great aspiration to have. Universities are very risk averse in general, which stops us from sometimes being innovative. So we'll have to figure out how we crack that one.
I think the language you had on your slide was taking smart risks. So working across boundaries. And I think across boundaries that Everett has there, not just across faculties, but also across the university and other external players where we work across boundaries to do that.
Well, that's some great advice there. Let's go on to our next poll.
What core values should UVic be guided by as we develop and implement initiatives over the next 5 years as part of our strategic plan? That's an interesting integrity.
Equity. Wow. Inclusion, equity. Decolonization coming up, sustainability, transparency, accountability. Caring citizens.
Yeah, I mean, these are the key currencies that we have. We have inclusion emerging as a key one. Equity, of course, still seems to be the most important value that people want to focus on. Accountability is coming up.
Accessibility now coming up as well. Decolonization. Student-centered approach, anti-racist approaches.
I like that service to our community that was highlighted as well, that we truly understand our role as looking at the different stakeholders and how do we actually serve their best interests.
Collaboration, innovation, critical thinking. So seeing some of the same trends people want for this institution now as they think will be required into the future, which is great to see.
Yeah, I see respect and respectful relationships coming up.
Courage, curiosity, kindness.
I think they're just looking at the size, the equity, accountability, integrity, inclusion, sustainability seem to be the center, and others are kind of related around that.
Well, thanks everybody for that input, and just keep firing in if you haven't done it already, but we'll move on to our last poll that we're going to do before we open up the floor from big ideas from you.
What's the one thing that you would like UVic to be known for on a national and global scale? Innovation.
Innovation.
Sustainability.
Indigenous scholarship. Ocean research.
Yeah.
Reconciliation, change.
I mean, some of these ones, it's interesting, you can unpack them and say, what are the different ways in which innovation could look like
Right, absolutely.
in different dimensions,
Yes.
and that UVic could be known for.
Decolonization, very strong on the agenda.
Sustainability,
obviously.
innovation. It's impressive how sustainability has shown up actually in pretty much all the questions we had. Slightly
Yeah,
different
absolutely.
angle, but always there as a key.
Right. Climate leadership coming on
Yeah.
now. Social justice, really important. Not a party school. I've
No.
only been here for 15 months during a pandemic. It doesn't seem like a party school, but whoever wrote that in there, not a party school, let's unpack that one during this process.
It's interesting. I'm looking at some of these focus on what we do in terms of a research and teaching, and some of them focus on how we do certain things and how we function as an organization. And there are values and a focus in that as well.
Solving wicked problems. I like that terminology. It says a university's role to get involved in the biggest challenges that we have on this planet, to work together with other universities, to work with government, business and industry and people to solve these big problems, wicked problems.
And I think that'll be connected to the second question we had about what are the expectations of universities in that world we are defining, and that would be a key one.
Well,
the student experience has come up. It's a key one.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thanks everybody for the input on that. We'll capture all of these and we'll make sure we put it together in a nice report that goes onto the website. If you want information on the strategic planning process and where we are and what we're hearing, we'll do regular updates to our website. So you can always click on the strategic planning website to hear the latest and greatest that we're hearing.
So now we are at the final segment of the town hall. This is an open 15-20 minutes of time that we have. An opportunity for you to share your big ideas, any suggestions you may have, questions you may have. We are just here to listen and soak up the wisdom and the insights that you offer us.
And we really do want to hear your voice. It really does matter to us. We want to hear your big, bold, aspirational ideas for the university if you have them. And we want to hear other ideas that you may think are just really important that we have to do that may not be big and bold, but something we actually have to do as an institution. We really want to hear everybody's input.
We are using the Slido Q&A feature for this discussion, so you can add your ideas, or if you see other ideas that you like, just upvote them so that we can start to see the different ones come up to us.
Great question from Kimberly Spears. Are you developing KPIs to measure the goals and objectives? And Kimberly, absolutely. I think it's really important for us to establish a baseline of where we are with respect to anything that we propose to be doing over the next 5 years and to measure that on a regular basis. And so we will have a defined set of metrics for all the things that we want to do. And that'll help us correct our course, or perhaps we decide we need to go somewhere else. And Alango, you're the planning expert.
No, I was just going to say when we talked about the key initiatives, of course, as you dive deeper into it, they will be connected to different themes that will emerge. And as we lay out the initiatives, we will be talking about what are the performance metrics there and who's going to be doing it and when are we going to do it, all those details to make sure everything is tied up. There's cascading down to the most tangible.
That comes back to what we saw on the screen: transparency, accountability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Doing that.
Okay, let's go on to our next idea.
How do you plan to engage the academic units actually specializing in social justice, critical thinking in this process?
Well, we're actually engaging all the academic units through the faculty councils. Alango and I are holding meetings with every faculty council. We started yesterday with our first one. I believe we have another one tomorrow. So you'll be able to have your input during that process. But I would also encourage everybody, no matter which unit you're from, to get involved in the other pieces of engagement that will be created through the course of the next 2 months. Everything from a bang the table that's on our website to small workshops that we'll be holding, to other opportunities to get together in groups and clusters with people to think of ideas and to submit them to the committee. And of course, you can always submit anything through the website itself if you've got ideas or suggestions. So the idea is not just to focus on those with the loudest voices, but for everybody to have some different mechanism or vehicle for giving us the input that they wish to give us.
I was going to add that not only besides the visits we have to the different faculty councils, they have the opportunities throughout this time period to engage. But later on in the summer, when we actually have these themes, and social justice and critical thinking are going to be key, there'll be these smaller groups that take a deep dive into it. There's one more opportunity for people who are specializing in that to actually contribute their ideas. We actually need that to make these themes come alive to have these very concrete action items.
Thanks, AY, for that.
Yeah. Shouldn't the institutional plan be driving the other plans and not the other way around? The reality is you're not going to find an organization where every single plan can start off exactly at the same date. You're going to find different levels of an organization, different plans at work, and it's going to be a bit of a fluid, dynamic dance between the overarching strategic plan and those existing plans. We will be informed by those plans, but we won't be limited by them. And they're also living documents. So to some extent, they should also be adapting and taking some of the key broad ideas from the overall strategic plan to have a bit of a fluid movement moving forward. That I think is pretty normal in organizations to try to have that balancing act. So.
I think you've nailed that one really well. I mean, it's a textbook to say yes. The answer is yes. In the textbook, it tells us always to do that, but that's not the reality of being on a campus where different plans get developed at different stages. But it is the vision to integrate these, to weave them together. And as Alango said, all these plans are living, breathing documents, and they'll be tweaked and moved in different directions.
How are voices being weighted in terms of importance? You say you want to hear from everyone, but will faculty voices matter more than staff or students?
Oh, you turn that one to me. Absolutely not. That's my declaration right now. Every one of the 27,000 of us at this university are equally as important. And so I'm not sure whether this is coming from a faculty member wanting more weight or a staff member wanting more weight, but we all have a voice in this. So we'll do what's right for the institution.
I was going to say the extraordinary efforts that's going into making sure the consultation is widespread and in multiple ways so that people with different styles can get engaged is a strong signal that everybody's voices counts.
Absolutely, yeah.
How might the implementation process help employees at all levels across UVic see themselves in the plan? If I understand that correctly, as we work our way down the logic of the model, as we get into the key initiatives and we start to think about implementation, the people who can actually tell us what the barriers are that need to be removed and what's worked in the past and what not worked in the past, or actually people who have been doing it in the past. So I'm thinking the employees who are on the front line who are actually engaging and dealing with these initiatives or variations of them in the past, their voices will be necessary so that they are guiding, we are drawing on their insights, their wisdom to make sure that we are doing the right things so that we can move forward and they can implement those initiatives more effectively and efficiently.
Yeah, and I also think, we are building the plan itself. The implementation comes after we have a plan, and our hope is that this is going to be a plan that gets developed that excites you, that wants you to think creatively, that wants you to think outside of the box, that really you want to get engaged with. The implementation itself occurs across many levels, and we absolutely don't want a top-down implementation plan where somebody over in some building north of the ring road says, this is what you're all doing. Each unit on campus, each division, each school, each club will interpret the overall plan in different ways and think of things to implement that will actually build together, will build our success in making the KPIs. And so the hope is really that we develop the plan before the implementation of it that really excites people and gets you really excited about wanting to come to work at UVic or come to study at UVic, or if you're the community, wanting to engage with UVic.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for that question. Is this a rollover plan that is monitored, reported on at least an annual basis, ideally quarterly? Or are we going through this process every couple of years?
Dr. Kimberly Spears getting lots of questions in today. So I would say, you know, our plan is a 5-year plan, but these are flexible, breathable plans that we will tweak and adjust as we need to either meet our targets and goals, or to take advantage or opportunity that exists, or to become in line with where the government may want us to go. So we do have to have flexibility in all of our plans. This is not a rollover plan from our strategic framework that we have right now. If that was the intent of the question, which I wasn't sure, but
yeah, I mean, the other way to think of this is the plan that we would come up with is kind of like a promise we make to the different stakeholders around. And we, of course, have the KPIs and the other metrics to make sure we are living the promise, keeping the promise. And there will be reports that actually highlight what is it we're doing and what's been met and what's been accomplished. So most certainly, I think there will be, it's not that we do the plan and it sits on a shelf, but it's a living document that's actually being implemented, and we are following up with how things are being implemented.
yeah. Lots of questions on the process, and we're happy to answer those questions. We're happy to answer them if you write to us. We're also really interested today in some of your big thoughts, your big ideas and visions. This is, you know, and we hope this is a bit of a visioning exercise.
There's one right here.
Fantastic.
Subsidized housing or co-op housing for staff and students that work on campus. Provide more options for staff and students where housing is a barrier.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. It's something we absolutely have to commit to. As an institution, it's hard to move to Victoria as either a faculty member, staff, or a student. It is a crazy, crazy market, and the availability isn't getting better. And it's something we're actively working on, but to actually make that a fundamental part of our vision for the future is critical.
Affordability came up as an issue in the different conversations we
That's
had
right.
last fall as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathleen, for that. Develop mutual awareness of UVic academic units.
Yeah, thanks, Everett, for that. I think that's critical. We've been talking about interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, and there's so many barriers to that exist at all institutions, not just UVic. And so what we have to think of is how can we actually encourage the awareness of the multiple academic units, and then beyond that, how can we encourage them to work together to solve some of the big challenges around the world, to actually deliver courses that are more fitting of where society is moving. You know, all the problems in today's society, climate change, for example, doesn't take just an engineer. It takes all kinds of social scientists, of artists, to actually come up with a solution. So interdisciplinarity is the way, and that starts with a mutual awareness.
I was just going to say, because yesterday we were talking about collaborating on programs as well as research, but if people don't even know what exists on campus, and if people are not aware of all the wonderful work that's going on, that the ideas for collaboration doesn't come up. So that's going to be key. Thanks, Everett. Here's a question: how is UVic supporting BIPOC students, staff, and faculty in a genuine way?
I think I'll rephrase it as, how will UVic support BIPOC students, staff, and faculty in a genuine way? And I think the answer is, as part of our new equity action plan that's being developed, there will be some very specific actions that occur. It's not a planning exercise. The strategy is being developed by actually people who've been marginalized on our campus, who have felt racism. Those things are being identified, and we're coming up with solutions that we'll try right away before we build a whole plan. And some things will actually work well and others won't, and we'll learn from our mistakes and tweak those and make them better. And I think this is a piece of work that's underway right now that if you aren't involved in yet, certainly get involved. It's being run out of the EQHR office, and it really reflects on a brand new process we have at UVic for trying to build a plan through action. So I hope the answer is, how will we? we'll soon reveal how we're going to do this in the next few months, and that will continue to build and grow over the next few years.
I think here is an idea, an institute that connects global sustainability initiatives with the local or regional action.
It's a great idea, Dwight. Thanks for that.
Can global engagement be reconciled with climate impacts of travel? Could UVic innovate here? So that's an international one. Both of us are in that space.
I was going to
so-
turn it over to the business school because they actually monitor right now their emissions through travel, and I think that's something we have to do better. And I absolutely, Jamie, it's a great question and a great suggestion. I think we do have to be aware of our global impact from travel. And I think what the pandemic has taught us is that do we need every meeting we always used to have overseas? Some would argue it's their right to go and present at a conference, for example, whenever they want to. Others would say, oh, we don't need to do that. We can do it online. And I think it's something we're going to struggle with, let's say, over the next few years, but we'll have to work towards a more positive solution. And things like they are doing in the business school,
Yeah.
where they monitor CO2 emissions through flights for all of their academic and staff members, I think is critical for us to do as an institution. There is a climate sustainability and action plan being worked on as we speak that will feed into our bigger plan. And we may actually come up with some bigger, bolder ideas for the institutional vision.
Yeah, and I think what may happen, we're trying to understand that we need to think of connecting with international partners and global engagement at different levels or layers. There are some layers and some levels that kind of lend themselves to just an online connection because of exchange of basic information. Some of them are a bit more deeper that require you to be physically in that place to build a certain impact or a certain relationship. For example, at the business school during COVID, because students couldn't travel back and forth to our partner universities, we had something called collaborative online integrated learning with the university in Poland, where their students and our students and their faculty and our faculty were doing it together. So we are realizing now there's a menu here. We can actually be on the ground, but connect online, the different forms of collaboration. So I think it's going to be a bit of a learning experience and a journey while we do justice to both aspects.
Yeah, and of course, this is where we'd really like to hear your voices as well. This is a great question that's posed by Jamie. We don't have all the answers. So what are your thoughts around this? How can this institution achieve the objectives that Jamie's articulated here? What are your great ideas and suggestions around that? So that's what we really hope out of this strategic exercise, is to get some of these fantastic ideas that you have. 27,000 of us at UVic. We've got to have some great ideas, and let's think about how we take those ideas and build them into our vision.
Yeah, Kevin, I think we have time for one last question or an idea. Here is a suggestion: dedicate energy to breaking down the barriers between staff and faculty. I know that's near and dear to your heart.
I'm putting my hand up first to help CS with that. I come from a system in Australia where I've worked the last 10 years where there is no differentiation between faculty and staff. I think it's really healthy. I'm not sure why we have barriers here, but we'll try to see what they are and how we unlock the barriers. I think it's great that we all work together as an institution, and that includes the barriers between faculty and staff. It includes the barriers between faculty's departments. It includes the barriers between administration, which we're called, and the campus, the barriers between students and faculty and staff, and students to students. And I think we have so many barriers actually that universities typically have, and I think it's exciting that our next plan could start to address some of these barriers that really have to be removed in the system.
I think the magic goes up and the barriers go down, so they are inversely correlated.
Yeah. So thanks for that, CS.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think we have a few minutes for your closing remarks.
Okay. Well, so first of all, I just want to thank everybody that contributed either via Slido or through some of your ideas and suggestions, and we have logged them all and kept them. It's really important that we can listen to your voices over this next few months. And I just want to reiterate, this is not about people building ideas for the institution in the Michael Williams building. It's actually about you contributing your vision of the institution. How can we weave people's ideas together? Does that mean everybody gets their own way? Of course not, right? 27,000 ideas won't make a strategic plan, but we've tried to weave the narrative together so that the things that are really important to people at UVic are taken care of. And we've heard this during the listening tour. equity, diversity, inclusivity, and anti-racism are issues we have on our campus. Our lack of progress in reconciliation, our lack of commitment to decolonization. We've got this opportunity now with this document called UNDRIP to really advance that. We've heard we want to be research intensive in the past. We have to keep that up. We've heard we want to be responsible for the climate and creating sustainable solutions, working with our community, and lots of other things. And so you've got your chance to really put those opinions in. I think the other thing we have to deal with that we can all contribute to is what's our role in the community? How do we as a university really connect with the local community, not-for-profits, government, the people in the community? How do we connect with our alumni, which is also our community? And how do we harness all of the collective thoughts together to really create some great solutions to solve some of the big social challenges that we see on our streets in the downtown core, to deal with some of the environmental issues that we've ignored for so long, and what's our role in that? And to, quite frankly, also help this province recover from this pandemic, you know, with a deficit of probably something in the order of $20 billion. Do we want to leave that for the next generation and the next generation? So what's our role as a university in helping stimulate and drive a new economy for BC? Let's go beyond rocks and trees. Let's look at what else we can do in this province. And that's all part of our role. Final couple of thoughts. Dream big. Let's not let things like budgets, revenue, damper our thinking. We might not be able to do everything we do, but you've really got to dream big to really make a change. And that's what we want to do at UVic, is to make a change. And so I just want to remind everybody, lots of opportunity for input over the next couple of months. Please check out the website for strategic planning. Take advantage of every opportunity you can to go get your voice into something. There'll be different modalities, different types of input, from written down comments to electronic submissions to standing up and voicing your opinion. So please do take part in that. So I'll just close. I just wanted to thank the people that organized this event today. We've got a fantastic team back there that's doing the video and the everything works online, which is incredible. So that's fantastic. And in my office, the president's office, the team worked really, really hard to get this town hall on. So huge thanks to them. And a huge thanks to you, Elango. And I always thought of Elango as this quiet, very measured, articulate, intelligent, impeccably dressed academic, of which he is. But actually, this guy is the bomb when it comes to strategic planning. I have heard from industry and business that who's the guy to go to in Canada for strategic planning? It's Elango. So I'm really glad, Elango, that you have agreed.
Thank you.
To join our team with your wisdom and knowledge. So thanks. And thanks everybody for attending today. And we hope to see a lot of you in the next few months. So please engage.